Hey gang, welcome back to another video here at Joe Daddy's Garage. Today I'm going to do a maintenance or repair video on this 1996 Dodge Ram. Now this truck is used by a friend of mine. He's a handyman, he does cabinet making, he does repairs and all sorts of things within a home, and he uses this truck a lot. I've done a lot of work on his truck over the years, and I've helped him keep it running because he just likes it. It's a good truck. Now, the truck is an extended cab long bed, and it has a 360 with an automatic transmission. It runs great. It's got 270,000 miles on it. Now, over the years, I've replaced various parts. I put on an upper control arm on this truck. I put brakes on it several times. I do the oil changes on it, and it just keeps on running. Recently, he has had a problem with a vibration. Now, initially, you might think that it could be a problem with tires. It could be a brake problem. It could be a variety of suspension problems. And as he explained the problem to me, I thought it could be something out of the ordinary, and I'm hoping in a way that it is. What I've found is the pitman arm has a bad ball joint where it connects to the drag link. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain that to you as well. But for now, I need to get the truck in the garage and get it up on my ramps that I use so that I can start doing the repair. Okay, the floor's too slick for my ramps, so back to Old Faithful and jack it up. So let's talk about the pieces that make up your steering. You're going to have a steering box. Now that comes straight, as directly attached to the steering wheel. That comes down and has a post or shaft coming out of it that the pitman arm attaches to. Now the pitman arm attaches to what we call the drag link. That drag link has a secondary connection here. This is called the idler arm. Now the idler arm is just like a dummy. It's just a carrier for the weight of that drag link. On each end you're going to have a tie rod, and that tie rod connects to the drag link and basically the steering knuckle. And then that has an adjustment sleeve on it which allows your toe in and toe out to be set. So on this end, here's the connecting point from the drag link through the tie rod end. That is your adjustment sleeve, and then the other end is where it connects to the steering knuckle. What I'm going to replace is this pitman arm, and let me show you why I'm going to replace that. Now to do this job, let me just show you the tools that you'll likely need to have. Normally, you see me operate with safety glasses and hearing protection. Count on that. Now, to remove the pitman arm from the drag link, you're going to need a pickle fork. Now I have this kit. I bought it a good while ago. It has 3 different forks that you can put on this shaft, and you have to just pick the size according to your application. In this case, I'll use the center one here. The second tool I'm going to use is one of these ball joint separators, and I'll show you how that works. Basically, it slips around the connecting point from the steering box into the pitman arm, and then as I tighten this down, it'll separate that. I'm just showing this one because there is a smaller version for like tie rods and different configurations. So anyway, there's that. Now to operate this tool, I'm going to need a 3/4 inch socket if I want to use the 1/2 inch drive, but it also has a square opening for 3/8 drive, I believe. So set that aside, set these 2 aside, and set these aside. Now The other thing I'm going to need is to be able to pull the cotter pin out of the castellated nut that is on the end that connects to the drag link. So I can use those. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch breaker bar and a 1/2 inch drive ratchet to separate things. Those are my tools of choice right there. I also have the hammer for striking the end of the shaft for the pickle fork. I also have a piece of pipe that I can add to the end of either the breaker bar. Well, I would only use it on the breaker bar, not the ratchet, but I can add it to the end of that to give some length. I also have a 5/16 wrench, and that's to install the Zerk fitting, or you can use a 5/16 ratchet and socket. The bolt or the nut where the pitman arm connects to the drag link is 13/16, and what I like to do is add or interlock 2 wrenches together so that I can create more torque and break bolts loose. So that's those. And then I have a grease gun, which will be used at the end to apply grease to the Zerk fitting. And I also have this axle lock nut set or socket set. This is from Harbor Freight, and I'll use this 32mm socket to get the nut off of the end of the steering shaft so I can separate the pitman arm. Alright, so the first thing I need to do is remove the cotter pin off of or out of the castellated nut. So I'm just going to straighten out that pin. Now, the next thing I need to do is remove or loosen this nut. Now, in this case, this is a 13/16, and what I'm going to do is take a second wrench, since I'm using the box end on the nut. I'm going to interlock a second wrench into the first wrench, and you can figure that out, but I'm going to use that. In this case, I'll probably go like this because I'm going to be turning counterclockwise. I'll put that in. I have the wrenches interlocked, and I'll put pressure on, and with little effort that nut comes loose. Now I'm going to leave that nut on there for now, and the next step is I'm going to separate the end of this, or separate the pitman arm from the drag link. And to do that, I'm going to use the pickle fork. So this will go in between here, and I'm going to strike this with a nice heavy hammer. Now, of course, wear safety glasses and hearing protection while doing this, and that is what I'm going to put on right now. Now normally, the reason I leave that nut on there is so that it doesn't separate and go flying, but this would not have gone anywhere anyway because there's nowhere for it to go really. Now you wonder why that's so tight. I can tell you. The post on the pitman arm is tapered. The hole in the drag link is conical. And what happens is this conical or taper compresses into the basically the same shape, you know, like a cone or a funnel, and it compresses onto that, onto the drag link. And when you tighten up the nut, that's what it does. It squeezes it together, and
makes it a very tight and secure connection. All right, so at this point I can push the drag link down and I can see or feel a little more with that ball is really loose. So once that's out of the way, I can move on. I can let that sit like that to removing the nut on the steering box. So that'll be the next step. All right, now this nut is a 32 millimeter, or at least that's what fits very snug on this nut. So you want to kind of line it up so that when you put in your breaker bar, you know, it's at an angle where you can get some leverage. So just kind of envision that a little bit. That's on there. And then I'll use my 1/2 inch drive breaker bar. And if I have to, I'll add what's commonly referred to as a cheater pipe. And that'll go on the handle for the breaker bar to give some more leverage. Again, wear safety glasses. You just never know. I should also point out that your steering is going to want to turn, and you can, if you want, allow the steering to turn all the way to the full stop. It would be to the left, so that it can't go any further. Yeah, I'm gonna have to add the cheater bar. There it goes. Sorry about that. And this has, behind the nut, a big lock washer. So set that aside. And now we're going to set up to remove the pitman arm from the steering post. So I'm going to use, like I said, the big ball joint separator. Slip that around. Tighten that into the center of that post. And I'll be using a 3/4 inch socket on my generic Harbor Freight extendable 1/2 inch drive ratchet. I really like this thing because you can change the length just by doing that. Pretty handy. So I'm going to tighten this. It's a lot of tension. When this lets loose, it's going to be loud. Well, I thought it would be loud, but apparently not. Whew. That took a little torque. Ah, success. That thing was in there. Might have damaged my tool. This thing doesn't want to turn very well now. Huh. Anyway. Haha. Very good. Now we're ready to install the new pitman arm. I want to point something out. On this shaft coming out of the steering box, you've got regular splines, and then at 4 locations you have like a fat section where there's like a double spline. If you look at your new pitman arm, you'll see internally in this opening there's 4 fat splines that are crisscross. What that does is it helps you keep it aligned. And if you can, obviously you can look at, how the first one came off and just put it back on in the same way, but it's also only going to fit one of 4 ways. So let's say you put it on like that. You could also probably turn it 90 degrees and put it on like that. Now why they do it so where it'll fit different ways, I don't really know, but I also don't need to know. I just need to know that I line those up and get that set and it's ready to go. So then I want to put the washer and the nut back on, and of course it's going to take some torque to get this tight again. I can't tell you exactly what the torque is. I'm sure you could look it up, but I know I'm just going to make it really tight and count on that lock washer doing its job. So I'm going to start with my 1/2 inch drive ratchet and just tighten this down. I'll also point out that this has a taper to it as well. Not as severe as the other one, but there's a slight taper here. Okay, that's not going anywhere. I have to say that. It's in the rule book. You have to say that. It's not going anywhere. Alright, so now I'm going to line up the drag link and get that connection made. And I can use either the original nut or the replacement. There's nothing wrong with reusing the castellated nut that was on there. They don't wear out. So I'm going to reuse that one. Now it's just a matter of lining up one of the notches in the nut with the hole in the shaft. That's good. And then you reinsert either the cotter pin you had or put in the one that came in the kit. I'm going to reuse the one that was already in the in here when I started. And now that I've done all that, I have something else I forgot to show you. and it's important, and I should have shown you this prior, but I recognize that I missed it, so I will cover it. The one thing I forgot to do was install the Zerk fitting. So on the original, there's a Zerk fitting to grease this. And of course it comes with a new one in the kit, and it's just a matter of installing it. I should have done this before I put this in place, but you know what? I'm not going to take this back out. So let me get a wrench and show you an easy way to put in this Zerk fitting. Basically, there's a hole in the back of the arm, and if you just line up that Zerk fitting with that hole, it's going to thread in. And you could do a couple different things. You could use a wrench, which is a 5/16, or you just use a little ratchet and socket. And you'll feel it get snug. It's a little easier to do while it's on a bench or something like that, but it's just as easy while it's mounted. And you want to make sure that it's flush. But you don't want to put too much torque, because if you snap it off, you're starting over. There. I wanted to point this out. That Zerk fitting does not fit completely flush. It's hard to see, but the threads do not go all the way to the base there. So there is a little bit of a shoulder or gap showing. So just know that. You don't want to snap that off. Now the last step is to put some grease in it. So you got to take your grease gun, snap it onto that Zerk fitting. There we go. And pump in some grease. Let it come out of that little cup. One more to grow on.
All right, that's the end of this video. Now, changing out a pitman arm, it only applies to a vehicle that has a steering box. If you have a rack and pinion setup, that's completely different, a whole different approach, and that's not what this is about. But if you have a truck or a car that does have a steering box, that's pretty much how you're going to do it. I don't think this was the hardest thing to do. You know, it might be about a 3.5 on a scale of 1 to 5, but you will need some tools. Just know that going into it. Now, I still have to test drive the vehicle, but I know that changing out that pitman arm is going to help some, if not solve the problem completely. Your problem may be different, and it may need a different approach. You could have a bad wheel bearing, bad shock, something like that. So just know that going forward. But if you want to have your steering checked like that, you know, all I did was set up the camera whenever I turned the steering wheel, and you could see the movement. Normally I would have somebody else assist me with that. In this case, my wife, you know, if I weren't filming, I would have her turn the wheel back and forth and look at that connection point. You could also check your tie rods at the same time. Make sure they're not loose and they may need replaced. But that's all there is for this video. So I want to thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, I ask you to subscribe, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you think of this kind of video, because I do a variety of things as far as car work and maintenance and all kinds of stuff on vehicles, but I need feedback. So that's going to be it. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Hey gang, welcome back to another video here. Oh, I gotta stop. Why do I clap? Why do I clap? Hey gang, welcome back to another video here at Joe Daddy's Workshop. This, 1996. Hey gang, welcome back to another video. Again, how do I do that? The arm that it connects to is called the idler arm. I'm sorry. And have to test drive the vehicle, but I know if nothing else, changing that pitman arm helped with the problem. Hit subscribe and the bell button, and we'll